The skies of Europe in the early 1940s were dominated by propeller-driven aircraft, their engines roaring as squadrons of Spitfires, Hurricanes, Messerschmitts, and Focke-Wulfs clashed above the battlefields. The world of aerial combat was defined by machine and pilot skill, by split-second maneuvers and daring dogfights. Speed was limited, tactics were tested, and survival depended on reflexes honed over countless hours in the air. Yet, while the pilots often took the glory in the headlines, the men and women on the ground, the mechanics, engineers, and technicians, were the invisible lifeline that kept these machines alive. Without them, planes never left the hangars, guns never fired, and entire squadrons would have been grounded in silence. Amid this high-stakes world, Britain was quietly experimenting with a new kind of aircraft, one that would not just match the speed of propeller planes but surpass them entirely. These early jets were delicate, temperamental, and unpredictable. They were a strange, almost alien presence in the familiar RAF hangars. Sleek metal bodies, thin wings, and turbines that screamed differently from any piston engine. Pilots approached them with caution, their confidence grounded in the knowledge that every takeoff was a calculated risk. And yet, behind every takeoff, behind every test flight, there was a network of unsung heroes. The mechanics whose hands calibrated engines, checked fuel lines, and ensured that even the smallest mistake wouldn't become catastrophic in midair. It was in this charged environment that the so-called accident occurred, a seemingly minor error in maintenance that would ripple across history. Perhaps a misconnected wire, a slightly misaligned component, or an overlooked gauge. The records never fully agree, and part of the legend lies in the ambiguity. To the casual observer, it was nothing more than a routine oversight. To those who understood jets, it was a moment fraught with potential danger. Yet, it would become the spark that led to the first jet kill in history, a turning point in aerial warfare that no one had planned, no one had trained for, and yet the world would remember. The accident happened at a moment when the RAF was still learning to trust the power of jet propulsion. The early jets were undergoing test flights over quiet stretches of airfield and the English countryside, their turbine engines sounding like nothing ever heard before. These machines moved faster than any pilot could anticipate, accelerating beyond the limits of traditional dogfighting techniques. The mechanics working on them were aware of the danger. A loose panel, a misfiring nozzle, or a minor calibration error could spell disaster. And yet, in one such workshop, an ordinary mechanic, someone whose name would barely appear in the official records, made a mistake that no one could have predicted. As the jets climbed into the sky during testing, the consequences of that error became apparent. Instruments flickered. Flight paths veered slightly. But in the chaos of experimentation, what could have been catastrophic became serendipitous. The altered performance of the jet, caused by this tiny maintenance accident, put the aircraft in a position to encounter an enemy in a way that no conventional tactics could have foreseen. It was the perfect storm of human error, technology, and wartime circumstance, a convergence that would create history. Footage from test flights shows these early RAF jets slicing through clouds with a strange, almost otherworldly grace. Their turbine engines whine like a futuristic promise, a sound that propeller planes can't match. The pilots, nervous and alert, adjust to the new speed, the new responsiveness, and the new unpredictability of a machine that seems alive in its own right. Below them, mechanics watch nervously, knowing that even a small miscalculation can have monumental consequences. But in that tension, in that fragile balance between error and genius, the stage was set for something remarkable. And so the world was poised on the brink of a new era in aerial combat, one where the combination of human ingenuity, mechanical skill, and an accidental misstep would rewrite the rules of war in the skies. A single mistake by a mechanic would soon become the catalyst for the first recorded jet kill in history, proving that sometimes, the smallest acts behind the scenes can change the course of history above it. The jet that changed warfare. By the early 1940s, Britain was on the cusp of an aviation revolution. The Gloucester Meteor, the country's first operational jet fighter, rolled out of hangars with sleek lines, thin wings, and engines that sounded unlike anything a pilot had heard before. Unlike propeller-driven aircraft, the Meteor didn't rely on the turning of massive blades to generate thrust. Instead, Its engines expelled hot gases at incredible speed, propelling the aircraft faster than any piston plane could dream. To the pilots who first climbed into its cockpit, it felt like flying a machine from another world. Agile, powerful, and terrifyingly responsive. Every twitch of the control stick produced instantaneous results. Every acceleration left conventional fighters trailing behind, and every climb or dive tested the limits of both machine and human. Jets like the Meteor represented more than a technical achievement. They were a fundamental shift in the philosophy of air combat. Propeller planes had dominated the skies for decades. Their battles fought at speeds dictated by pistons and propellers. Their tactics honed through dogfights that emphasized maneuvering skill and split-second reactions. A jet changed all of that. Its speed rendered traditional pursuit tactics almost obsolete. Its ability to reach higher altitudes meant it could strike from above with impunity or escape situations that would have doomed a prop plane. The Meteor's survivability was rooted in physics. A jet could simply outrun many threats, making interception by conventional Luftwaffe aircraft a near-impossible challenge. Suddenly, the balance of power in the skies was shifting. In contrast, the Luftwaffe's best aircraft, Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulfs, were fast and deadly by the standards of the early war, but they had limits. Their propellers restricted top speed, their engines struggled at extreme altitudes, and their operational ceiling was much lower than the Meteor's. Against these planes, the Meteor could dictate the terms of engagement. Pilots no longer had to rely solely on acrobatics or cunning. They had the advantage of raw, unmatched speed. In many ways, the introduction of jets felt like placing a new type of chess piece on the board, one that moved differently, struck differently, and forced the enemy to reconsider every strategy. The Meteor's revolutionary nature wasn't just theoretical. It was proven in early encounters during testing and patrols over Britain. Observers on the ground would watch as the jets streaked past clouds, leaving trails of vapor in their wake, their turbines whining like metallic sirens. Conventional aircraft struggled to keep up, their engines straining, pilots battling inertia and wind resistance, while the Meteor seemed to glide effortlessly into the future. Its acceleration and climb rates defied expectations, and its responsiveness gave RAF pilots confidence that they could survive engagements that would have been fatal in a prop plane. Even the Luftwaffe, when they first encountered these strange new aircraft, could not fully comprehend their potential. They were fast, elusive, and unlike anything they had ever faced. Behind this technical marvel was a network of engineers, designers, and mechanics who had spent years experimenting with turbines, metallurgy, and aerodynamics. Every component of the Meteor, from its jet engine to its control surfaces, was designed to exploit a new understanding of speed and flight. Pilots often marveled at how the aircraft seemed to anticipate their inputs, responding with precision that made the difference between life and death. And yet, despite its power, the Meteor remained fragile in certain ways. Early jets were temperamental, sensitive to overheating, and unforgiving if mishandled. Every takeoff and landing was a negotiation between human skill and mechanical reliability, a delicate dance that made every flight an act of courage. The contrast between jets and conventional aircraft extended beyond speed and maneuverability. It symbolized a paradigm shift in warfare itself. With jets, the RAF was no longer just fighting enemy planes. It was rewriting the rules of aerial combat. The skies were no longer a level playing field. Physics, engineering, and innovation had tilted it. For the pilots who would soon take these machines into combat, the lesson was clear. The future belonged to speed, to altitude, to the machines that could think faster than the enemy. And for the mechanics and engineers whose hands shaped these aircraft, their work was finally vindicated. The accident that once seemed minor now pointed toward a revolution in air power. The Gloucester Meteor and its jet contemporaries would not just survive dogfights. They would define the next era of warfare. They turned every encounter into a contest of calculation, reaction, and daring. In a world still dominated by propellers, the Meteor was a harbinger of change. The first true jet fighter, a machine that would prove its worth in both war and history, and ultimately, a symbol of how innovation and human skill could combine to create something extraordinary. The unsung mechanic. While pilots often received the glory, The real war in the skies began long before engines roared and guns fired. It began in the dimly lit hangars of RAF airfields, where mechanics worked tirelessly, their hands coated in oil and soot, their faces streaked with fatigue, yet their minds razor-sharp. Among them was a man whose name history would rarely remember, but whose actions would create the first-ever jet kill, a moment that would forever alter aerial warfare. In an era when secrecy was paramount, few even knew what these jet fighters could do. The Gloucester Meteors were classified machines, experimental and temperamental, their engines capable of reaching speeds that demanded respect. For the mechanics, this meant not only performing routine maintenance but constantly improvising, anticipating the quirks and faults that could turn a routine flight into catastrophe. Every nut tightened, every panel inspected, every engine test could make the difference between life and death for the pilot who would take the plane into the sky. The accident itself occurred during one such routine preparation. The details were simple: a misaligned panel, a misread gauge, or perhaps an overlooked hydraulic lock, the sort of small human error that could easily be dismissed in quieter times. But in the high-stakes world of early jet operations, even minor mistakes could have outsized consequences. One morning, as the mechanic adjusted fuel lines and ran final engine tests on a Meteor, a small miscalculation caused the aircraft to behave unpredictably during takeoff. Jets, unlike propeller planes, responded instantaneously to changes in thrust or control inputs. The machine lurched forward, faster than anyone expected, sending the pilot scrambling to compensate. In that instant of chaos, the plane intersected with a Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft overhead, and history was made. The first jet-powered aircraft kill had been recorded. It was an achievement born not from combat strategy or pilot skill alone, but from the interplay of human error, mechanical complexity, and sheer chance. Yet this was no tale of negligence. It was a story of ingenuity under pressure. The mechanic had operated in conditions that tested endurance and judgment. Hours of long shifts, constant awareness of secrecy protocols, and the stress of knowing that any malfunction could be fatal weighed heavily. RAF airfields were loud, bustling places, with engineers and pilots moving in a synchronized chaos that seemed almost like choreography. Every action had to be precise, every tool correctly used, every component double-checked. Mistakes were not tolerated lightly, but in the frenetic environment of jet development, mistakes were also inevitable. And sometimes, they produced results that were greater than anyone could have planned. This moment also highlights the profound trust between mechanics and pilots. The pilots who flew the Meteors relied on the unseen hands of the men and women in the hangars. They trusted that the engines would hold, that control surfaces would respond, that the aircraft would behave as expected in the unforgiving skies above. The accident that led to the first jet kill was a stark reminder of how human error and human skill could intertwine to produce outcomes that shaped history. Without the mechanic's meticulous attention to the aircraft, even a momentary slip could have ended in disaster rather than triumph. The story of the unsung mechanic is also a testament to innovation under pressure. Britain's jet program was experimental, conducted in secrecy, and driven by a combination of necessity and ingenuity. The war demanded rapid advancement, but resources were limited, and the stakes were astronomical. Mechanics became inventors on the fly, improvising fixes, understanding machines that were pushing the boundaries of contemporary engineering, and sometimes, by accident, creating history. Their environment was tense, their labor intense, and their contribution invisible to the world beyond the airfield walls. And yet, it was this environment of relentless pressure, combined with the mechanic's skill and dedication, that made the first jet kill possible, a pivotal moment where human hands indirectly shaped the outcome of aerial warfare. In the end, the accident was more than a mistake, it was a catalyst. It was proof that innovation, even when imperfect, could redefine combat. It humanized the technological marvel of the Meteor, reminding the world that behind every revolutionary aircraft was a team of individuals whose expertise, fatigue, intuition, and sometimes error, played an essential role. The unsung mechanic, working in silence, in secrecy, and under unimaginable pressure, had unwittingly altered the history of air combat forever. First contact. The day began like any other over the rolling fields of southern England, yet it would mark a turning point in aerial warfare. In the cockpit of the Gloucester Meteor, the pilot gripped the controls with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The jet beneath him was unlike any aircraft he had flown before, raw power contained in a sleek metallic frame, a machine capable of speeds that made propeller-driven planes seem antiquated. But the true novelty wasn't just the aircraft's velocity, it was the unseen human hand that had inadvertently set the stage for history. The earlier accident in the hangar had created an unexpected readiness, a chain of events that now brought him face to face with an enemy aircraft, the first adversary to meet a jet in combat. High above the English countryside, the Luftwaffe reconnaissance plane cut across the sky, unaware of the technological leap that was converging on it. From the pilot's perspective, the encounter was surreal. In the distance, the enemy's silhouette grew sharper with each second, but it was the Meteor's speed that redefined the chase. Whereas conventional dogfights required maneuvering, patience, and careful positioning, the jet allowed no such luxury. Every fraction of a second counted, and the aircraft responded to inputs with razor-sharp precision. The pilot's eyes flicked from horizon to horizon, scanning for flak or unexpected movement, every heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the engine's turbine whine. Suspense built as the Meteor closed the distance. The German pilot, seasoned and confident in his propeller plane, had never experienced the approach of a jet. At first, he mistook the rapidly advancing aircraft for a conventional fighter until the speed betrayed it. The Meteor seemed to materialize out of nowhere, a streak of steel slicing through the sky with uncanny velocity. The RAF pilot felt a surge of adrenaline but also a weighty awareness. Every action, every adjustment, had consequences measured in fractions of a second. He lined up his target, the enemy plane framed against the endless blue, and prepared to execute a maneuver no Luftwaffe pilot had ever faced. The encounter was chaotic yet strangely precise. The Meteor's acceleration allowed it to gain on the enemy almost instantly. The German aircraft attempted evasive action, banking sharply and weaving through the clouds, but the jet's performance nullified the maneuvers. From the cockpit, the RAF pilot could see the Luftwaffe's reactions in real time: confusion, disbelief, and fear flickering across the enemy's movement. Each calculation, instinctively performed, brought him closer to history. For the first time, speed and altitude advantages combined with human ingenuity and an accidental preparation error to create a scenario that no pilot in history had ever experienced. Then the moment of impact arrived, not a catastrophic explosion, but the controlled precision of a well-aimed cannon shot. The Meteor's guns, synchronized with the pilot's every movement, found their mark. The German aircraft shuddered as metal met metal, trailing smoke and spiraling toward the earth below. In the Meteor, the pilot barely had time to register what had happened before he was already assessing his next move, scanning for other threats, feeling the exhilaration and tension that only combat at this unprecedented speed could produce. The encounter was over almost as quickly as it had begun, yet its significance was monumental. A single jet, guided by an experienced pilot but enabled by a mechanic's earlier oversight, had achieved the first jet-powered kill in history. This wasn't just a tactical victory, it was a proof of concept, a glimpse into the future of aerial warfare. It demonstrated that jets were no longer theoretical instruments of speed, they were decisive weapons capable of rewriting the rules of engagement. The RAF pilot returned to base, adrenaline still coursing, the reality of what had just occurred slowly sinking in. On the ground, the hangar mechanics, unaware of the unfolding drama, continued their work, unaware that their accident had just altered the course of history. In the aftermath, reports were filed meticulously, technical data analyzed, and procedures refined. The accident became legend among those who understood its implications, a small maintenance error that unexpectedly validated the Meteor's potential, showcasing how human imperfection and technological innovation could intersect to create a moment of historic consequence. It was a testament not just to the power of jets, but to the unsung figures behind the machines, whose labor, intuition, and even mistakes paved the way for a new era of warfare. The first jet kill. The sky over Europe on that fateful day was deceptively calm, a blue canvas that belied the unprecedented drama about to unfold. At the center of it, the Gloucester meteor sliced through the air with a metallic hum, a jet unlike any the world had ever seen. This was no ordinary sortie. Every second carried weight, for in the cockpit, history was about to be written. The RAF pilot, tense but focused, tracked the enemy reconnaissance plane ahead, a Luftwaffe aircraft that had no idea it was about to become the first victim of jet-powered aerial combat. Every instrument in the meteor's cockpit vibrated with energy as the pilot maneuvered into position, aware that this engagement would not only test his skills but the very capabilities of the new jet itself. From takeoff to interception, the engagement was a ballet of speed and precision. The meteor's acceleration allowed the RAF pilot to close distances impossible for propeller-driven planes. The enemy, confident in its maneuverability and experience, banked sharply, attempted evasive loops, and even tried to dive toward cover, but the meteor matched every move effortlessly. Unlike conventional dogfights, this encounter was measured in fractions of seconds. Decisions, reactions, and adjustments all executed at a pace that left the German pilot struggling to comprehend what was happening. The jet's canopy framed the Luftwaffe plane against the endless expanse of sky, the target both tangible and ephemeral as speed blurred the edges of reality. Then came the moment that would forever be recorded in history. The RAF pilot's guns roared. Tracers tore through the air, closing in with devastating precision. The first hit struck true, and the German plane shuddered violently, its wings twisting as smoke began to pour from the engine. The meteor, still in perfect control, held the line as the enemy spiraled downward. It was quick, almost clinical, a demonstration of the jet's power and the pilot's nerve under pressure. In mere minutes, the engagement was over, leaving behind a single unmistakable truth. The first jet kill in the history of aerial warfare had been achieved. On the ground, at RAF command centers, disbelief quickly gave way to elation. Reports crackled over radios, voices tense but triumphant as the news spread. Officers pored over mission logs and debriefings, replaying the sequence in their minds. It was not just a tactical success but a profound validation of the Meteor program. Here, in real combat conditions, jets had proven their worth. Their speed, altitude capabilities, and raw firepower rendered previous limitations of air combat obsolete. This engagement reshaped the RAF's understanding of the sky, offering a glimpse of a future where jets would dominate dogfights and interception missions alike. The reactions extended beyond military personnel. Mechanics in hidden hangars, who had worked in secrecy and under extreme pressure, could scarcely imagine the significance of the accident that had prepared the jet for this moment. Engineers who had fine-tuned every turbine, tube, and cannon realized that their labor had achieved more than experimentation or theoretical data. It had secured a victory that no human eye had foreseen. Newspapers and intelligence briefings would later reference the event as a turning point, a quiet technical triumph that underscored how innovation and human ingenuity, even tinged with error, could alter the course of history. The psychological impact on both sides was immediate. The Luftwaffe, previously confident in its propeller fleet, began to take note of the unprecedented threat jets represented. Tales of the Meteor's first kill rippled through enemy ranks, sowing doubt and caution. For the Allies, the achievement became a symbol, a demonstration that technology, combined with courage and adaptability, could level the odds in a war dominated by conventional machines. The engagement, brief as it was, resonated far beyond the skies over Europe, signaling the dawn of a new era where speed, altitude, and innovation dictated the rules of combat. Ultimately, the first jet kill was more than a military milestone. It was the result of countless unseen efforts, the meticulous work of mechanics, engineers, and pilots who had pushed boundaries under secrecy and stress. It was proof that in war, history often pivots not on grand strategy alone but on small decisive actions, a miscalculated adjustment, a split-second maneuver, a gunshot at the right moment. That day, in the skies over Europe, the Gloucester Meteor and its pilot forever changed air warfare, establishing a legacy that would define the jet age for decades to come. Impact on air warfare. The first jet kill did more than add a statistic to wartime records. It reshaped the very way air combat was understood. Before this engagement, dogfights were measured in turns, dives, and propeller thrust. Pilots relied on skill, intuition, and experience with aircraft that were bound by the mechanical limits of their engines. The Gloucester Meteor, however, introduced a new paradigm. Its sheer speed, unmatched climb rate, and stability at high altitudes forced commanders to rethink tactics entirely. Interceptions no longer depended solely on visual spotting or flanking maneuvers. They could be executed in seconds, over distances and altitudes that would have been impossible for propeller-driven planes. Every pilot now had to consider that the sky itself had changed, and that the rules they had mastered could be obsolete in a flash. At RAF headquarters, the implications rippled through every layer of command. Mission planners adjusted flight patterns, patrol schedules, and engagement protocols. Jets were no longer just experimental prototypes. They were frontline weapons, capable of striking with precision before the enemy even had a chance to react. Fighter squadrons began to integrate jets into mixed formations, using them as interceptors to disrupt bombing runs or reconnaissance missions. The RAF recognized that speed alone could be as decisive as numbers or firepower. In practical terms, this meant that even a small squadron of jets could hold off much larger formations of conventional aircraft, a strategic advantage that could tip the balance in critical theaters of war. The psychological effect on pilots was immediate and profound. Luftwaffe aviators, who had once held air superiority with confidence, now flew under a shadow of uncertainty. Rumors of these strange, fast, and deadly machines spread quickly through German ranks. Pilots knew that any engagement could now be dominated by a plane they could neither outturn nor outrun. Fear and hesitation began to creep into previously routine missions. For Allied pilots, the first jet kill was a morale boost of unparalleled significance. It proved that technological innovation could amplify human skill, giving them an edge that no amount of experience could match. Pilots approached the cockpit with renewed respect for engineering ingenuity, understanding that mastery over their aircraft was now inseparable from understanding its technological potential. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the event shaped the trajectory of jet development itself. Engineers and designers were encouraged to push the boundaries of speed, armament, and reliability. The success of the Meteor demonstrated that jets could survive combat and deliver results, fueling further investment in research, prototypes, and mass production. Designers began experimenting with swept wings, improved turbines, and heavier payloads, all informed by the understanding that jets would dominate the skies in the near future. Doctrine evolved alongside technology. Air forces around the world began drafting manuals, training protocols, and strategic plans that accounted for a new type of aerial warfare, one in which speed, altitude, and reaction time were decisive. This singular engagement also changed how air campaigns were conceptualized. Reconnaissance missions, interception strategies, and escort protocols all had to account for the jet's capabilities. Commanders realized that air superiority could no longer be maintained solely by numbers or pilot skill. It required technological foresight and rapid adaptation. Intelligence gathering shifted focus toward identifying enemy jet programs, evaluating their performance, and predicting their deployment. In essence, the first jet kill transformed not just individual tactics, but the entire architecture of air strategy, laying the groundwork for the aerial doctrines that would dominate the latter half of the 20th century. Ultimately, the first jet kill was both a tactical and symbolic milestone. It proved that the jet was no longer a laboratory curiosity, but a weapon capable of rewriting the rules of war. It highlighted the interdependence of human skill and technological innovation, showing that even a single engagement, sparked by an accidental discovery or maintenance mishap, could ripple outward to influence global strategy. For generations of pilots and engineers that followed, this event became a reference point, a testament to the power of speed, precision, and ingenuity in the skies. The world had entered a new era of air combat, one in which jets would not merely supplement existing aircraft but define the future of warfare itself. Legend and misunderstanding. History has a way of remembering the bold, the daring, the ones who take to the skies while leaving the ground behind. Pilots' names are etched in memoirs, medals, and history books. Engineers who design revolutionary machines are celebrated in technical journals and documentaries. Yet, in the story of the first jet kill, one figure remains largely invisible: the RAF mechanic whose small accident set the stage for history. This was not a heroic dive into enemy territory or a brilliant aerial maneuver. It was a human error born of fatigue, pressure, and the complexity of a cutting-edge machine. A loosened bolt, a misconnected control, a forgotten checklist item, something so mundane that it would have gone unnoticed in almost any other context. And yet, this minor mistake created a chain of events that led directly to the first kill by a jet fighter in combat, a milestone that changed the rules of aerial warfare forever. The mechanic's work environment was grueling and secretive. Jets like the Gloucester Meteor were experimental, fast, and temperamental. Every system was pushed to its limit, every component tested beyond standard specifications. Mechanics worked long shifts under the shadow of war, knowing that a single misstep could endanger not just a plane, but the lives of pilots and the success of missions. Amid the clanging of tools, the hum of early jet turbines, and the tension of wartime secrecy, human error was almost inevitable. Yet, in this case, that error became an unintentional contribution to history, a reminder that innovation is rarely a straight path and that sometimes breakthroughs emerge from the imperfections of the human hand. Over the decades, the story of the first jet kill became shrouded in myth. Some accounts exaggerated the pilot's skill, portraying the event as a daring solo achievement against impossible odds. Others minimized the accident, presenting the success as inevitable once jets entered the theater. The mechanic's role, central to the sequence of events, was almost entirely omitted from narratives. Veterans, historians, and the public alike focused on the dramatic visuals of jet versus propeller aircraft, the tension in the cockpit, and the shock experienced by enemy pilots. Rarely did anyone pause to consider that behind that historic kill was an ordinary worker, doing an ordinary job, whose small oversight created extraordinary consequences. These myths and misunderstandings underscore a broader truth about history. The narrative often favors the visible, the glamorous, the easily celebrated. Yet, history is made equally in workshops, maintenance bays, and laboratories. The accident illustrates how seemingly insignificant human actions, a slip of the hand, a moment of fatigue, a deviation from procedure, can ripple outward, influencing events far beyond the immediate moment. In the case of the first jet kill, the RAF mechanic unwittingly became an architect of aerial history, proving that innovation is as much about human unpredictability as it is about engineering genius. The lesson extends beyond military history. Every field, from science to technology, from medicine to exploration, is punctuated by similar stories, breakthroughs sparked by mistakes, oversights, or accidents that reveal new possibilities. The first jet kill is a dramatic example, but it is not unique. It reminds us that progress is rarely linear, that the human element is inseparable from technological advancement, and that history's most consequential moments often hinge on details that seem, at the time, trivial or even disastrous. The RAF mechanic story also reframes how we understand heroism. Heroism is usually measured by courage under fire, by the ability to confront danger directly. Yet here was a quieter form of heroism: resilience, diligence, and the acceptance of risk in the shadows, far from medals or headlines. Without the meticulous, tireless work of ground crews, the mechanics, engineers, and maintenance teams, pilots could not have taken to the skies, jets could not have performed, and history would have unfolded differently. The first jet kill, while celebrated as a pilot's achievement, was equally a tribute to these unseen hands and minds. Ultimately, the accident serves as both a legend and a caution. It is a legend because it altered the course of air warfare in an instant, creating the first recorded jet kill and demonstrating the potential of new technology in battle. It is a caution because it reveals how fragile systems are, how human error can create consequences far beyond its immediate scope, both perilous and transformative. In remembering this event, we are reminded to value the hidden contributors, to acknowledge the unexpected sparks of innovation, and to see history not just as a sequence of grand achievements, but as a tapestry woven from countless small, human threads. Legacy and reflection. The story of the first jet kill did not end in the skies over Europe. It marked the beginning of a new era in aerial combat, one defined not by propellers and pistons but by jet engines, supersonic speeds, and unprecedented technological complexity. After World War II, air forces around the world raced to develop faster, higher-flying, and more maneuverable jets. The lessons learned from that first engagement, speed, timing, and the integration of technology with human decision-making, became cornerstones of modern air warfare doctrine. Tactics evolved to incorporate radar-guided interceptions, advanced navigation systems, and jet formations that leveraged every advantage the new machines offered. What began as an accidental first kill became a blueprint for the future, a proof of concept showing that jets could dominate the skies, that their potential extended far beyond experimental test flights, and that small moments could have enormous consequences in the theater of war. Yet amid the rapid advancement of jet technology, the mechanic whose oversight set this transformation in motion remained largely invisible. History has a tendency to leonize pilots and engineers while leaving the unsung workers in the shadows. But that single accident serves as a symbol of unintended heroism, a reminder that progress often hinges on the smallest human actions. It illustrates a paradox. Mistakes, fatigue, and human error, usually considered liabilities, can, under extraordinary circumstances, become catalysts for innovation. Without the mechanic's inadvertent contribution, that historic first kill might have occurred differently, or later, delaying the practical proof that jets could change the course of aerial warfare. This quiet influence, unrecognized yet profound, highlights the intricate interplay between human fallibility and technological advancement. Post-war, jets became central to military strategy, from the Cold War standoff to conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Supersonic fighters, jet bombers, and later multi-role aircraft all built upon the foundations laid during those early experimental flights. The principles demonstrated by that first engagement, precision, coordination, and the melding of human skill with cutting-edge machinery, remained vital. But alongside these technological leaps, the human stories, like that of the RAF mechanic, remind us that progress is never purely mechanical. History is shaped not just by design, but by serendipity, by errors, and by the adaptability of those who operate and maintain the machines. The mechanic's accident also invites reflection on the nature of recognition and legacy. Who is remembered in history? Who is forgotten? While pilots earned medals and engineers received accolades, the maintenance crews, often working in dimly lit hangars under immense pressure, contributed equally to every success. Their work was invisible, their heroism quiet, yet it had tangible impact. In the case of the first jet kill, a single overlooked detail translated into a milestone for military aviation, a testament to how intertwined human effort and technology truly are. The event encourages us to broaden our understanding of historical significance, to honor not only the obvious victories but also the subtle, almost accidental contributions that make those victories possible. Finally, the story serves as a meditation on the unpredictability of innovation. Every technological breakthrough carries risk, and every human error carries potential. What seems minor at the moment, a loosened bolt, a misaligned component, a skipped step, can ripple outward, shaping outcomes far beyond immediate comprehension. The RAF mechanic's small mistake did more than assist a pilot in a historic kill. It symbolized the complex dance between human limitations and technological potential. It reminds us that history is never linear, that progress is messy, and that even accidents can become turning points when courage, timing, and circumstance align. As we look back, we see the first jet kill not just as a story of speed and firepower, but as a narrative of human ingenuity, fallibility, and perseverance. It underscores that every advance, every historical milestone, rests on countless unseen decisions, small actions, and sometimes even mistakes. In this light, the RAF mechanic's accident becomes emblematic, a quiet yet enduring symbol of unintended heroism, proving that in the tapestry of history, even the smallest threads can alter the pattern forever.